Can you see it?
No.
Oh.
A win story is a very concise statement of your strategy. And your strategy is a numbers strategy. There's all kinds of tactics and things you do in an election, and they're all strategic too. But the base strategy to win is a numbers strategy. So it's how many votes do you need to win? So you have to calculate that, and you're not going to know for sure. Every election is different the way it works. Sometimes somebody gets just squeaks through. Sometimes they win in landslide. Sometimes they win in a landslide and it looks like they had it all along. But if you're involved in the campaign, you know that landslide started in the last 5 days. So um, you're making your best guess of where your votes are going to be, and the second part of it is how you're going to secure those votes. What is your campaign's going to do that will secure those? Next slide, please, Bianca. So where are you going to get your votes? Are they other parties you're going to attract votes for? If so, how many do you need from each party? What other voters will you target? Does anybody have ideas of other ways you could target voters? There's also
New citizens.
new citizens. Yep. There's also voters in certain polls in your riding, so you can target certain polls and try to get voters out from those polls. Certain parts of your riding, those are types of voters you can. Voters who support certain issues. So there's all kinds of ways of looking at your voter and figuring out who you're going to pull. Voters that for some specific reason might support your specific candidate. So next slide, please, Bianca. So the next question is, what is going to get those voters to vote for you? And this is not like, this is not a lighthearted question. Again, it's a number based. Like how will that happen? So you've got to have a pretty clear strategic idea of how you're going to be able to capture those votes. So any thoughts on how you might do that?
Talking to as many people as you can in that poll or about that issue or whatever it might be that you're targeting.
Yeah, so that is one way, but you'd want to be very specific. We're going to talk to this many people in this poll this many times, and you'd want to figure out how many votes you were going to be able to secure through that method. But that's definitely one you could use. Any other thoughts on that?
Hey, Marianne, it's Mark here. Obviously, we want to solve a problem they have and provide a solution in the political arena. And also, the more you talk to them, when I was in sales, you had to talk to someone 3 times about the same solution before they bought in.
So how would you talk to them? What would you be doing to access them?
Well, for us, we have a large group of Mennonites in Bruce Gray owns Sound who don't tend to vote provincially. So that's one of the guys who's mentioned non-voters in the past, but they are certainly big uh, developers of renewable energy. But right now, if they don't vote, that's not going to happen. There's not going to be the subsidies for the farmers. So that could be a way, and we'd have to talk more to their leaders in their community to see if they're willing to buy into that.
Yeah, so that would be an issue-based one, and then you'd have to figure out how you were actually going to get them to the words in that middle sentence, compel their votes. That's what
To com
that's what you'd have to figure out how that part of it. I mean, compel is a strong word because obviously you can't strong arm them, but it gives you the idea. It's not you're not thinking of it lightly as a possibility, but you're actually figuring out what strategically will drive this. So we have some samples of this from past campaigns. Oh, there's one, town hall meetings. Yeah, town hall meetings are certainly a good way to get people to know about you and things like that. And it can potentially compel some votes if your candidate kind of owns an issue, and if you manage to get it seen that you own that issue and there's a lot of support for it, and you can build a really big public lobby supporting you in that can work. Similar to the what Mark said about the Mennonite farmers and renewable energy. Next slide, Bianca, please. So here's a sample. This is an actual sample from a riding. In this case, the riding won. So have a read through this. And my question to you is, what in this win story sample makes this to you a plausible win story?
They've identified a lot of numbers that are very specific and specific measures and outcomes for those with with respect to those numbers.
Yeah. Is there any one of those numbers that jumps out for you, Ian?
I think the identified supporters and the phone numbers is a really important one. Just being able to connect. I'm a big believer in connecting with people as often as and as many times as possible. And I think that's having that database available is just a huge resource that you have to capitalize on.
So the 9,183 supporters from the last election and the phone numbers,
Yeah, and the
21,000 phone numbers.
21,000. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Anyone else with something that makes this story plausible to them?
I think that erecting the 1,500 signs and boxing out the other candidates is a neat strategy.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it looks like they had a huge number of phone numbers relative to the total number of voters in the riding. 21,000 phone numbers. That's quite a lot.
Yeah.
For me, it's turning those volunteers, a volunteer to call the sign supporters, the 2,500 into volunteers, because campaigns run on volunteers, especially in a large region like up here.
Yeah, and so what they're doing in that line specifically is they're taking volunteers right now. So in the G vote system, active one volunteers are volunteers who are doing things on the campaign. So they might be putting up signs or helping in the office, but they're not volunteers who are comfortable talking to voters. So in that particular piece there, they've got those active one volunteers, and they're going to try to rapidly turn them into volunteers that are talking to voters by asking them to call former supporters for signs very early. So they're increasing their capacity for talking to voters very early in the campaign. Any other thoughts about what makes this look like a solid win story? For me, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Most of the people in the riding are, well, it looks like based on the numbers, are not conservative voters.
Yeah, that's right. There's a lot of progressive voters, so that's quite a and that to me that's the biggest one here is that progressive swing vote is so important. So in this win story, they've identified hanging on to their current votes and hanging on to the progressive voters that swing in that riding, adding more, and then that's not enough votes. We need this many more, and how are we going to get them all? So let's flip to the next slide, and you'll see the progressive swing and how they identified it. So this is the slide showing you the numbers in the last election. So you can see that in 2014, this riding went Liberal. In 2018 and 2022, it went NDP, but it's the same number. Those are voters that are moving. That's the progressive swing that you're seeing there. And then it swung green. So that's how we're not talking in this slide, or in this presentation, we're not identifying the ridings just because for strategic interests, but so this is the only one we're showing you the actual numbers on, but it's pretty interesting the way that riding went and how by identifying the progressive swing vote and going at it from that as the main overarching tactic. Is everybody kind of following what I'm saying here? Okay, let's look at the next slide. So this is another sample of a win story. The rest of these samples are all ridings that did not win, but they had, this is the win stories, and they were good win stories, for sure. So we'll have a read through this one and see what strikes you as important in this win story.
The large number of voter IDs that are progressive.
Already.
Yeah, already. Yeah.
Well, do they have them already, or they're ones that they're ones they're going to get? So they have a goal of ID in 50% of the progressive vote.
Once they add
ID
it
is
all,
an ID is when you know who the voter is. So in your
right.
database, yeah.
Yeah.
So they're
I mean,
going to go into polls that have had the priority one polls have a 20% or greater green vote and high progressive votes. So that means greater than 50% voting for a progressive. That'd be a liberal, NDP, or green vote. That is how they set their priority poll, which were their priority polls.
I think Dara had her hand up as well.
Okay, great. Your mic must be off, Dara.
Yes, I was going to say the same thing. I'm especially impressed how much poll identity they've done.
Yes, a lot of work and understanding the different polls here. Yeah. So they have, and in their priority two polls, it's also a high green vote and greater than 40% progressive vote. It doesn't say what the high green vote is, though. So that was obviously less of it's maybe they didn't even measure for it, but so, and then they identified what you've identified a few times. They're going to go to those polls multiple times.
Right.
And try to establish them as the progressive choice early. So if you have a progressive vote strategy, you want the progressive voters to see you as their choice early. Okay, want to slip to the next one there, Bianca?
All right, one more question quickly.
Sure.
What's the best place to go to get the poll by poll information?
Well, you can get that from Elections Ontario.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So here's a third one. This one for me is a little long, I will tell you that, but it's got a lot of content. So what makes it look plausible to you? If you look at this, is there anything that looks plausible to you?
The Greens appear to be in second place in the riding.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they were or not, but to me, the thing that's most plausible in this one is there's a change in incumbent.
Yeah.
And that's a huge opportunity that should not ever be underestimated. And so that puts those 25,000 voters that show up for that incumbent, depending on who's selected, that puts them in play in a way they haven't been for, while that person was sitting. So that's there. The problem is that they talk about that. So they see that as they're going to swing 5,000 voters from them, but they don't really say how. So this is a longer one than some of the others, but it is a little weaker. It's a little less of why will those 5,000 come over to you from the party that is sitting in the riding. It doesn't say what's going to draw them to you. So and then they're going to swing the voters to vote others, and it's a little and it's a little bit dependent on things. They're expecting low voter turnout. They're expecting a lot of things in here, as opposed to it's a little less. I guess you'd say it's a little bit less based on hard facts. Do you want to give us the fourth one there, Bianca? Okay, what do you guys think of this one? See if you see anything plausible in here. It's a little harder to read with all these X's.
Yeah.
So from an election, including half of a certain party's voter who voted green in a past election. And we will aim to convert 50% of the voters from that base. So they're going to try to pull 50% who voted green in the last election. Anything else that seems compelling? To me, the thing I find the most compelling in this one is the last part. So they are planning on having their supporter IDs. They're going to identify supporters at a rate of 65% of their win goal. So if you think you need 30,000 votes to win, you're going to identify 65% of those win numbers, those 65% of that number, so 65% of 30,000 before the election. But even stronger in this one, so 65% is a strong number, you need 50% to win. So 65% is a very high rate, but they're going to try to ID them by the advance voting date. So very early in the election. So they're planning on having their vote secured very early in the election, which will be very strong. If you secure a vote like that early in the election, voters in your riding will be feeling that you're a very strong candidate and you have a good chance at winning. So they were aiming to have 40% of that by writ drop and 75% by the advance vote. So that's putting you in a very strong winning position if you could do that kind of identification. Is everybody following what I'm saying here? So that's, if you think about the first sample with the signs going up early and the number of signs going up, it's kind of the same strategy in a sense that what you're doing is you're getting the riding to see your candidate as the winner right out of the gate, because you're putting such a strong early effort in. Do you want to put the next slide up? Oh, that's the end. Okay. So the thing with the win story is that it's not easy. I'm not going to fool you by saying it's easy to do. It's not. If it was easy, we'd be winning all the time. It's hard. You have to think a lot. You have to think about your riding, what the factors are in your riding, how could it really look? And you might have a path to win in the next election, or you might have to shape it over 2 or 3 elections, how you're going to get there. But you have to, without a numbers-based path, you will only continue doing the same things, and you will increase things a little bit, but not as effectively as if you look at how you're really going to get the numbers you want, and strategically what they are, where you're going to get them in your riding, and then how you're going to do that, what's going to pull those voters to you. We're more than game to help. There's some materials. We've got like a how-to, as Bianca said, there was one in the campaign zone in the documents already. So we've just updated it a little bit. There's a little template for you to plug numbers into and a way to thinking about it. Depending on your riding, what Dara's talking about, going and looking at your polls more in depth and understanding your polls might help you get a better path. If you're going to do that, there is another voters spreadsheet that we should send to you as well that helps you start working at the poll level. So this is an invitation for people to take this task on, and for us, we can help you as well and help talk you through things where you get stuck, ask you challenging questions, drive you crazy, stuff like that. Like, what makes you think those people are going to vote for you? And the real challenging question is going to be, what makes you think that you can do something that's going to get people that never voted before to vote? Because those are, you know, there's a lot of things you gotta, it's not easy. It's not easy to win, but you can do it. I'm 100% confident that uh, people will support green policies. So the big challenge in front of any green campaign is voters like to vote for who they think is going to win. And mostly they think the green candidate can't win. So your green candidate has to look like the one who's going to win in your riding. That's your, in a nutshell, what has to happen.
Marietta, if I could pick up on that point that you just mentioned, realistically speaking, that this is something that we certainly confront in our riding, is that people feel that the green candidate is not going to win. And so if we start looking forward to say, okay, in the next 2 or 3 elections, we want to be able to be in a position where we could be a realistic chance to win. How do we incrementally make those steps upwards? Because obviously you've got to start making progress towards it. And like, what are kind of the key things we need to focus on just to kind of build a little bit closer, a little bit closer?
Well, that is essentially the type of planning that needs to happen. So you have, in every riding it might be different. It might be in a riding, I think it was, I don't remember who had the riding, but I think it's probably whether you had the Mennonite. If that's part of your strategy, then you look at how you're going to do that. So basically you build a strategy and then you figure out what steps you're going to do. So if that's your strategy, you figure out how are you going to make the relationships you need? What can you do that's going to encourage a traditionally non-voting population to vote? Can you really change that? And you have to basically have a plausible path there. Or if it's based on, if you're in a situation where you have a fairly progressive voters, but they're not voting for your party, then how do you get a candidate that shows more leadership and vision and draws people? How do you develop enough uh, profile for that person, and how do you support them enough with enough volunteers?
Yeah.
So it's all about building. So it is a lot. People talked about talking to people. It is identifying who your supporters are, staying in touch with them, building on that the next election.
Yeah, and it's getting awareness in the community. Like, I guess there's different ways, different strategies you can take to be able to get the word out to people that you're involved and you're actually a party that is worth taking note of. So I'd certainly be interested to hear, if you have any tips or tricks as to some of the strategies that have been helpful in other writings to get the awareness level higher.
Yeah, it's partly awareness, but awareness is not really a voting word. So
Okay.
it's more, you need more commitment. And it is, depending on how big a profile you have, it's starting at different levels. So, for example, just thinking back on Mike Schreiner's campaign in 2018. So, because, like he has a lot of profile in the party and he has a lot of profile provincially now, but he did not in 2018.
Right.
So, he was involved in a issue around water in the riding, and he managed to have a high profile inside that issue, and he was in a position of leadership on that, and that made a really big difference. So it's basically a matter of being significant in the riding, depending on where you stand. But you have to have it's awareness, but it's also having significance.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
I just add to it, and I mean, this is part of the whole kind of development writing program, is helping us all build these long campaign plans that will, see us keep leveling up, and how do we get the candidate and the team to be relevant and have significance in the writing. But another word that was used a lot in PSM in the last election was just like, let's show the momentum. It's all about showing that people are coming, we are building, this is exciting. And so as the team builds and as your issues campaigns builds and your candidates nominated in this really fanfare way, it's like there's momentum happening and people should pay attention.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna jump in just because we had set it for a half an hour. I understand we could chat about all of these strategies forever, so we're gonna continue meeting, as often as everyone's schedules permit, and we're here to meet and work with you all. Like I said, this is a really essential component of determining kind of like who does have a shot. What do the numbers say? Can we do this? Do we have a good path forward for the next couple of election cycles? But we want to work with everyone who applied, of course, regardless, to keep building until we're all in these positions with really plausible and exciting win stories. So let's please do take a stab, and we'll send out those how-to documents and a few other links, maybe on the poll, where you can find the polls in Elections Ontario, and reach out to us at organizers, and we will connect you with someone who can help you build out your team's win story. But we're excited to watch you guys build this all out.